first versus third. Arsenal currently 7 points clear of Man City at the top of the table. Newcastle, who dropped points against Leeds, looking to bounce back to winning ways. Won't be easy at the Emirates. Arsenal, Kev, your former team, how surprised have you been with this turnaround this season? Bear in mind, obviously, I think they had a good transfer window, probably the best transfer window, but still, no one expected a team that fell off a cliff last season, challenging for fourth, to be where they are this season.
Yeah, I think the way last season finished helped Mikel Arteta in pre-season with the recruitment and with the focus of the team. They've come together. Saliba's coming back in as well.
Looks really good.
Looks a really, really good player. And the two signings of Zinchenko and Jesus, them coming in, there's a belief in this team that they can win. There's a belief in the young players that they're a little bit older now, and they there's nothing daunting them. They know what to expect from this league, and they're going to attack it. And you could see the type of mentality they have. It doesn't matter who they play, they're going for it. And it seems to be working right now. They're not afraid of anybody. And it's another big test at the Emirates tonight against a quality Newcastle team who, you know, can turn anybody over on the day.
Yeah, I think we've seen that with Newcastle. He mentioned, Crookie, Saliba and Jesus and Zinchenko. Is the biggest signing the permanent signing of Odegaard?
Well, we touched on this yesterday. I wasn't convinced at the time, but he certainly proved me wrong in terms of his ability and his leadership skills. But I think if you look at all the recruitment, and recruitment is so important in modern football. We talked about Chelsea yesterday. For me, they've got their recruitment all wrong for a number of years. Credit to Edu, who featured a lot in that Amazon documentary. He's made some really shrewd signings, and not just, again, they're not just looking at what they can do on the pitch. They're looking at the personality and the character. And one of the best things they did was remove Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, much like Erik ten Hag at Manchester United. That showed the other players that actually Mikel Arteta is very much the boss. And I think it was a relief to a lot of the Arsenal players when Aubameyang left the club. I'm not sure he was the most popular player in that dressing room, and it's clearly a very united group. Same for Newcastle, which is why this is such a fascinating battle. I just have a feeling that Arsenal are going to make yet another statement tonight. I think they're going to win the game.
Yeah.
And I think they are favourites for the title. We said it yesterday. You won't get Arsenal fans ringing up and saying we're going to win the league, because they're almost scared of putting their head on the block like that. But they're not going away, Arsenal. We're nearly halfway through the season. They've passed every test that has come their way. The game they did lose at Manchester United, even with my United hat on, they were unlucky to lose that game. There was a big decision that didn't go their way, and then they got caught by two sucker punches on the counter-attack. Their home form is imperious. The Emirates used to be quite a toxic place for Arsenal to go and play their football. It's the total opposite now. The fans have all bought into Arteta. There's none of these protests against the owners anymore, because, to be fair to the owners, they back their manager, and they're doing it again. Mudryk about to arrive for big money from Shakhtar. Arsenal are in a great place right now.
They really are. Look, we're going to talk about Eddie Howe and what Newcastle are doing, but just stick with what Crookie was saying there about Arteta. He's not just done sort of the job in terms of sort of completely changing the mindset and philosophy of not just the players but the fans as well, but in terms of shipping out those players that he didn't want. And that job, as a young manager coming in, is your first job to do that. I mean, you've got big egos there. Ozil, ego, he had to kind of get rid of. Aubameyang. Young Guendouzi was a problem as well for him. So he's not only had to kind of bring in the players in terms of recruitment, but he's had to get a lot of the big players, big names off as well.
But that's where the big problem started, with the fan base, because a lot of the fans were connected to these guys. But if you're a manager of note, you know what you want your dressing room to feel like, to operate like. And for a club like Arsenal, having to pay players to leave, that tells you how desperate the club were and the manager were to get them out the building. Once you get them out the building and then you start recruiting, I think this was the first season where everybody said, okay, Mikel Arteta, this is your team now. Let's see what you do. And look what the team's doing. The team is going from strength to strength. And you know, probably a scary thing that many people don't speak about, there's so much room for growth in this team.
They're so young.
Because they're so young. Crookie, you're right. They are so young. So
you think Pep's regretting giving him
big time
Jesus and Zinchenko? Almost a bit of arrogance there. You're not going to compete with us, but we'll give you those players.
We got Haaland, you know.
Yeah, we got Haaland and we're okay. We still got Cancelo as a left back. We don't need him. Now surely he's thinking, what have I done?
It was a little gift to his pal, wasn't it? Two little gifts to his pal. And I don't think, like any of us, Pep Guardiola expected Arsenal to be challenging Manchester City so soon. Not only are they challenging, at the moment they're leaving them in their wake.
How many of us expected Newcastle to be top 4?
I didn't. I could be honest with you about that one. I think what happened at Newcastle over the last year has been nothing short of remarkable. They've got new owners, but they haven't gone crazy in the transfer market, although they've got the deepest pockets. They've bought wisely, and Eddie Howe has done a great coaching job. Maybe, a lot of Newcastle fans weren't too sure, Eddie Howe.
Of course they weren't. I mean, they'll say they were now, but they weren't. He was fifth choice, wasn't he? If that, I think, yeah.
With the fans.
Yeah.
But in fairness, the owners identified him pretty early. They didn't flirt with people like Conte and Mourinho. That was only really the talk of the terraces. I think they hung their hat on Eddie Howe quite quickly, and my word, has he repaid them. And it's great. It's great for British coaches to see, a still relatively young English manager performing so well. And getting the chance at one of the richest clubs in the world now.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned sort of coaching, and look, he has spent money. I mean, let's not hide behind it. Not a lot, I think, especially when you consider the players that were being linked when the owners took over. I mean, it was all the names, wasn't it? But what he's done, I guess, is you look at players like Joe Linton. I think we touched on this yesterday. Almiron. Like how he's improved players. Again, very similar to Arteta, how he's improved players as well. But what he's done with Joe Linton and Almiron in particular.
Fabian Schär as well.
Yeah.
Been brilliant.
It's phenomenal, isn't it?
Yeah, the defence has been incredible. I think Arsenal and Newcastle have the best defensive records. But you see players who weren't doing the business previous, and then you see them now. I mean, Joe Linton's a revelation up there. Smart move bringing in Bruno Guimaraes. He's a real catalyst, creator. But Almiron, he's gone another level, hasn't he? He's kicked on, and Newcastle, hard work. They're hard work if you're not on your mettle. What
if? And I think, look, most people, I give Newcastle a very, very good chance, and Arsenal clearly favourites though. What if Newcastle do go to the Emirates and win? Wow. I mean, are we having a conversation about Newcastle? Because right now the conversation about Newcastle's top 4, right? That's kind of what it is, and I think top 4 would be incredible. What if they go to the Emirates though? The kind of statement that would be to be Arsenal at the Emirates.
It would be huge. It would be huge.
It would be huge. But Arsenal are still clear. Yeah. Arsenal could afford, but they don't want to afford to be battling. They want to be able to go 10 points clear. But if Newcastle win, this tells you Newcastle aren't far off.
Would Eddie Howe take a point?
I think he'd take a point.
Take a point right now.
With Arsenal's home record. But I guess this is going to be a test of character for one of the teams. Assuming there is a winner, whoever loses this game, suddenly there's a little bit of adversity. There hasn't been adversity for Arsenal or Newcastle this season. So it will be a test, especially if Arsenal lose at home, how they respond. I think in that dressing room, they've got the players to respond in the right manner. You
mentioned about Arsenal being linked with a couple of players, maybe to boost their hopes of a title challenge. Not much so with Newcastle in terms of definite signings. Is it quiet on that front? I know we're going to have a little transfer chat a bit later, but quiet on Newcastle's front?
I think it is. I got a text message this morning saying that they've reignited their interest in James Maddison. I've checked that out with a couple of sources. I'm not convinced that will happen, certainly not in this transfer window. You would never say never with Newcastle because they do have these strict financial restrictions that they're operating under. I mentioned yesterday, Eddie Howe's got a pay structure in place that he doesn't really want to go above because he doesn't want to upset the harmony in the dressing room. But that Isak signing came a bit out of the blue in the summer because basically the owner said, OK, come on, let's go big. I'm going to give you one big signing this window. So that could happen in January. At the moment, that isn't part of the plan. Don't rule it out.